Hi, everyone. This is the Coffee with the Geek program, and this is August of 2017. With me today are some authors. I have some book authors and some coffee lovers as well. I have Holly Clark, and Holly is an award-winning educator and speaker. She's based in San Diego. She's a national board certified teacher, Google certified innovator. She's been a longtime teacher and administrator. She consults globally with schools to help them successfully and purposefully innovate instruction through use of learning theory, technology integration, and design thinking strategy. So a lot of good stuff there. And you can find her, I believe, at hollyclark.org. Am I right with that one, Holly?
You actually cut out. So if you said hollyclark.org, no. We're right.
Clark.org. I hope I'm not cutting out. And you also hold an MA in education from Columbia University in New York. Very nice. Also with me is Tanya, again, the co-author of the Google Infused Classroom. And Tanya has an MA in Ed Tech and is a passionate educator from Montreal, Canada, now living in South Florida. So big travel gap there. You are also a Google certified innovator and Apple distinguished educator. She has deep roots in teaching and pedagogy, and she consults with schools and she to help plan large-scale deployments of technology plans. And she currently is the Director of Educational Technology at Grandview Preparatory School in Boca Raton, Florida. So welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk about your book today. But before we get to that, Holly has told me she is a world traveler coffee lover. So let's start there. Let's start with coffee.
So
Holly, tell us about your coffee experience.
Yeah, when I saw the name of the show, I was like, wow, that really goes well. I get to talk about my book and coffee. So I'm a person who thinks of coffee as a fine wine, and I look for certain beans and I look for them to be roasted a certain way. So when you said, what's your favorite brand? There's certainly not a brand. It's all about how it's processed and how it's roasted, and there are certain beans that I like. So I'm always looking for a bean that comes from Panama, a geisha. And right now I'm drinking a nitro, a cold brew on nitro, and I went to the place to go get a flat white, and I walked away with a flat white, a pour over, and a coffee on nitro because I'm such a freak about coffee. But anyway, so that's why I'm a little bit weird about this.
Yeah, and I'm on the other opposite end where I don't really drink much coffee, but I enjoy it when I'm with Holly. So how about that?
Let me just ask one follow-up question because now you've got me fascinated. So Holly, how did you kind of get this knowledge about coffee? Because it sounds like you've really kind of dug into the making and brewing and the beans of coffee.
Yeah.
Where'd you learn about it?
It started, my friend Jim Still and Ken Shelton are very into coffee, and I went to Melbourne, and Melbourne is the quintessential known spot where they have the best coffee in the world. And when I went to Melbourne, I did a coffee tour from this woman named Monique Bayer. I feel embarrassed now that I don't know her name because she's a friend now. And she took me and taught me about coffee, and from then I have been obsessed with it. And I was just in New York, and I was saying on my Twitter feed, or maybe even Facebook, I don't know, that most people come to New York and look for food. I came to New York to look for beans, and I came back with certain beans, and I went to certain coffee places. So she really started me being obsessed.
Okay. All right, well, let's transition a little bit and let's start talking about before we get to the book, let's kind of talk about maybe your educational journey before becoming authors. And so I've given kind of the background, but maybe let's give more of the personal stories of your journey. And how did you, first of all, get into education and then maybe take off as a kind of 21st educator using technology? And maybe talk about your inspirations. And that's a big question, but let's dig into that.
Well, I'll kind of...
We'll start with you, Tanya.
I'll dig in. I think that my inspiration for going into education stemmed from probably my experiences as a learner growing up. I had a great aunt who had special needs. and in the 1950s and 60s, she was put into mental institution. And growing up, she lived with my grandmother. And I think her experiences and sort of building that kind of empathy for an understanding of just being around other people and being kind, and a desire to want to apply that kind of philosophy of how I saw my mother and my aunt, and their experiences as they were growing up and how they were treated, and hearing the stories. I knew that I wanted to work in education and be the kind of teacher that would not be the same way that my aunt was treated in many ways, but really try to be an advocate for children and doing what's right for kids. And growing up, I also had some of my own learning differences that have, I think, shaped me as an educator. So I really am passionate about reaching different learners where they are and advocating for doing what's right for our kids. So I think that in terms of my learning journey and my journey as an educator, that's been probably my biggest passion, because I'm really sensitive and really in tune to making sure that every single kid in our classes is able to be reached in a way that is meaningful to them. And I'm driven in every single thing I do by that. So I think that's kind of my personal journey.
Great. Holly?
So that's why Tanya and I are kind of soulmates. We feel the same way. I sort of became a teacher because I had a really bad teacher. I remember in 5th grade, and she made me do a state report. And she made me do, like, I had to write the Chamber of Commerce and get the flag and get the bird and get the, like these things that were already set in motion. And I remember typing that report thinking to myself, this is so ridiculous. Like, this can be done better. And I had kind of a different, I definitely had ADD or something in class, but I was also a really high achiever. And my teachers never met my needs in that way, and just went to the ADD part of me, and we're always like, you talk too much, you're a disturbance. And I just knew that if they had reached me, it wouldn't be that disturbance. So I became a teacher to do better. And I feel the exact same way as Tanya. I think we can reach all students, and when we don't, we're not putting in enough time maybe, or we're not learning the ways that we can reach those kids, and they don't all have to do worksheets, and they don't all have to turn in the same homework. And so for Tanya and I, it's our lifelong passion to give these ideas to teachers and help them think of new ways, because I don't blame them. They just didn't know any different. We've all learned with the teacher talking in front of the class, so that's sometimes how we teach, because that's how we learn. And I'm going to close my window here in a second. But so it's a passion for us to help teachers on that journey, including ourselves. I'm not perfect.
Yeah, I'm far from perfect. I have a long way to go, and I'm constantly trying to figure out how I can improve and how I can build better relationships with people, and how I can be more empathetic. And so, it's just kind of going through that journey and being vulnerable and being willing to take risks. And to, this year I'm going back to teaching. I have been out of the class for a while. I was working at a district for a while and working with teachers as a coach. And it's been a while since I've had my own kids. And so this year I feel like a brand new teacher. I'm like beyond overwhelmed and freaking out about my lessons and thinking about all of the stuff that I have to prepare. And I'm like, oh my God, I love teachers. This is the hardest job in the world.
Playing off what both of you said about, I think both of you came to this kind of place to help, students with special needs. Do you think technology as it stands right now is in that place to really help students learn in different ways and at their own pace?
Without question. I this year, my role is I'm teaching, and I'm also director of educational technology. And one of the first things that I made sure that we had access to, and I don't have a huge budget, but I made sure that I had read and write text help, because without question, if I'm not leveling the playing field for every single learner in my class, then what's the purpose of what we're doing? It's the first thing that I made sure. I didn't care. I said, if it's going to help one child in my school who has dyslexia or who has some processing issues, then we're purchasing this because it's like air you breathe. And so that to me is what the technology does. It's like air we breathe. It allows us to have the extra supports that we need, the scaffolds that we need to really help every learner achieve what they need to achieve, or get to where they need to go. So we're giving them that extra step. We're like, I guess, leveling that playing field for them.
And for me, I wish we didn't call it technology. Technology to kids. So it's like, if I were to look at the telephone that's no longer on the wall, I was born into a world with a telephone, so I would never call that technology. And kids who are born into a world with smartphones, tablets, and computers don't look at this as technology. They look at it as the way they learn. And I sit here with my Google Home all the time, and it does my math for me. So I have to add up stuff for like book sales and things like that. And I go, hey, Google, and she says, or I go, okay, Google, what's 375 minus 4? And I wouldn't obviously ask that. But, and she's not answering me right now because
I don't understand.
No. And so, like, technology, this is not technology to them. This is the way that they learn. And us using old methods is doing a disservice, because learning is different now. It's ubiquitous. It comes in different forms, and we're getting kids ready for 2030 and 2040, and it's our we must.
We're 17.6% into the 21st century, and it kills me that we're still calling it 21st century learning. I know, but it's like it's just now. Like we're preparing. Actually, we did an activity today at our school, and our kids who are going into pre-K 3 are going to graduate from college. I think they said it was like 2040 or something like that. Like, these 3-year-olds are going to graduate from college in 2040.
And can you imagine virtual reality that will be a part of their lives? They're probably going to go to meetings with like we can't even consider what it is now, but right now we think of it as a cardboard. Like, are you kidding me with your textbook? Like,
I know.
And I used to get in such trouble. Like, I've been in offices all over by principals because in the year 2000 was like, I'm not teaching from a textbook. We have the internet, and thank God we have things like ditch that textbook and ditch that homework. Like, it's crazy that we're even having this conversation, but you said 17 points, whatever percent, we're only like 5% of teachers having this conversation.
Let me throw out a couple different ideas off of that concept, and we'll come back to maybe solutions to that. But I remember seeing a behavior write-up report one time, and the write-up said something like, student is disciplined for calling the teacher a muggle. And Holly, I know you're not a Harry Potter fan, but a muggle is a non-magical person. and I
got
think,
in trouble for that?
Yes. But, I looked at that saying, like, maybe that student was, saying, this teacher, and Holly, you said it, like, the kids are technology is just so part of them. Or maybe Tanya, you said it, it's just so part of their lives that they don't think of it as technology, but they must look at people who aren't using technology so powerfully as almost, muggles, like these non-magical creatures. But let me just maybe tie into that is, why are we still talking about 21st century learning, those hurdles? And I know we could probably...
Because we're not 21st century learners. Well, I think I am, but we're not all 21st century learners ourselves. So when you have a fear, or if you're not comfortable with the technology yourself, it's really hard to let go of that control. And also, like, we're still working in old systems. We're still in these old ways of thinking. We're still doing things because it's the way it's always been done, and we're comfortable in that space. So it's really that idea of a growth mindset is so important, and being able to say, like, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to try something new. It's not going to be comfortable. And I think a lot of it coming from Canada and moving to the US was really like earth-shatteringly different. And I don't think people understand culturally what a culture shock that has been for me. And I genuinely, like Holly will tell you, I was seeing a therapist for a while. Like it was genuinely like a culture shock for me, because in many ways I think differently, but I had to navigate the education system, which was driving me insanely crazy, because we don't value questions, we value answers. We want kids to be robots. So the things that are most important, that everyone is graded on, that everyone values, that all the schools are assessed on, are not the types of skills that we want to encourage, the ones that we are completely against, but they're the things that are valued. So there's like I guess a dichotomy that's going on, and it's leading us to a brick wall.
So I did a TEDx talk on Tanya's experience of her daughter, and she's now at the school she's at because of what her daughter went through in Florida. Tanya moved into Florida right when they were taking recess out so that they could score better on test scores. And she moved from a place, and I don't think people understand this, that Canada falls right underneath Finland in their test scores internationally. And she moved to a place that's 47th in the world on international test scores. And I mean, she was crying, like, how can this be real? But this is what we accept in the US. And what's funny to me is that, you know, people are not 21st century learners. Google has been out for 20 years next year. How are you not a 21st century learner? And if you're on Facebook, that's not learning, that's social sharing. Like, how can you get kids ready for a future that you're not in?
Yeah.
And anyway, you're going to get us started, don't you?
This is the stuff that Holly and I sit around talking about, like all the time. So you're just part of our regular day-to-day right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up Finland, and I just saw an article in EdWeek. It was a blog post that said, U.S. teachers travel to Finland and discover that, one of the reasons, teacher empowerment is one of the reasons Finland is so strong. And I was like, why did you need to travel to Finland to understand that teacher empowerment is? But I think that says a lot, doesn't it? Like,
and
we really don't empower teachers.
We don't empower teachers at all. Like, when I was doing stuff outside of the box, I had other teachers looking down at me. I was getting in trouble for not using a textbook when I had the internet. It's crazy. But one of the things that I hear a lot about Canada is, oh, well, they're homogeneous, or Finland, they're homogeneous. And Finland, maybe. I must admit I haven't been there. But if you've been to Canada, it's the most unhomogeneous place. It's crazy. And people are like, oh, they're
it's the most multicultural place. I moved here and I was like, this place is so homogeneous. Like, like in comparison, the school that I taught at, I was a high school teacher, and the school I taught at had 90 different languages spoken at home. It was
like
90 different. Yeah, no. Like with our students, we had students who spoke 90 different languages. It was amazing. So it's not like that at all.
Well, I think go ahead, Hallie.
No, you go.
I was just going to say one of the strongest points I thought you made was the fact that kids are, we are teaching to this kind of still skill and drill kind of testing mentality when the world is just so open to other opportunities. And we have these tools that can, kids can express information and learning in so many different ways. Why are we still, hammering away at,
And it's okay to have assessments to check where
mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
And it's okay to have those kind of check-ins, and I'm not against that. But I can't speak for other states, but I know at least in Florida, it's high stakes accountability. So how is that equitable? Like, it just blows my mind. Like, how do you have where you are penalizing teachers in lower socioeconomic areas for their test scores? I mean, the whole thing is so insanely crazy to me, and it's one of those things that I'm like, why aren't more people like more pissed off about this? Am I the only one? Like, this is crazy.
That's what we talk about in the book, though, and that's why we wrote the book, is we have these conversations, and we are like, for me, if you're not hearing from every student in your class in 2017, you're doing it wrong. You have tools, and then people are like, but I don't have a one-to-one classroom. Every kid in your classroom has this. You've got to be kidding me. So, and I guess I got a tweet as I did that. But that's why we wrote it, because we wanted to give people an idea. You have these tools. How can you use them more effectively to do the things that we're talking about, to not do kill and drill, but get the same important information from kids? And so it was like a passion. Like, we wrote the book at some parts, and we were like, oh my God, this is so good. I can't wait to get back into like our own classrooms to try it. We're both dying to get back into our own classrooms right now to do Flipgrid, like, and take it to places Flipgrid didn't even know it could go.
I introduced Flipgrid today to my faculty.
Nice. Yeah, and then there again, that's a whole different way of letting kids express information that you want. We want that content. We want those ideas, and this is a whole new way of doing it, and it's an easy way to express it.
You want them to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And if we're not doing that, how can we teach it?
So can you give me kind of the overview of the book? What so if a teacher wants to find out about it, what's the kind of lay of the land without giving too much away from it? What's the summary?
Holly, do you want me to take it?
Yeah.
So the book was written to show how technology can help improve learning. So it's broken down into 4 pedagogical strategies. We look at formative assessment, or assessment for learning. We look at differentiated instruction. We look at student demonstrations of learning. And then we look at curation and reflection. And we have a special section on digital portfolios. And so we have these 4 sections, and because Holly and I come from an instructional design background with our master's in educational technology. So we're constantly thinking about the learner first, design thinking about who are we designing for, and so we can't help turning off our instructional design hats. And so these are the 4 areas that we look at, that when we're thinking of our lessons and our units and we're planning backwards using understanding by design, we are constantly going through these 4 areas. And so what we did is we broke those strategies down. We talk about what they are. We talk about how you would use these strategies. We talk about strategies that you can do in your class with formative assessment and student demonstrations of learning and curation reflection. And then we take 20 of our top tools and our toolbox, the best tools that we love, that we cannot live without, and we look at how those tools can amplify and help students make their thinking visible within formative assessment, differentiated instruction, student demonstrations of learning, and curation and reflection. And so it's really a guidebook that you could pick up and pull anywhere and help you while you're doing your lessons, while you're in the midst of your planning, and really be a really great support. And we really wanted it to be accessible and easy to read, so that you weren't stuck to one section, but that you could use it every day of your entire school year, all year.
Yeah, and we take 2 learning theories of understanding by design and making thinking visible, not ours, we didn't come up with them, but we put technology to them because they were written in the 90s when people were using pen and paper for these things. And so now we amplify it with technology the way it should be.
So it's a pedagogical book that uses technology as a tool for learning.
And the focus is Google. And do you think what Google is doing, they seem to really have created this kind of dynamic framework with the G Suite apps. Do you see that as the future, and they're going to keep just powering through?
They're the best.
We love, well, and all of our tools are not necessarily Google tools. They're tools that you work within the Google ecosystem, that if you have a Google Apps or G Suite now account, that you can use with these different tools. But it's really using the web. When that's really what it comes down to: using the web, using the tools that you have access, that you can use in a Chromebook, that are web based, that you can use Google with. But Google's not the main focus, but it's understanding how to use the tools within that ecosystem to help students make their thinking visible and amplify their voice.
And what Google does best, and what things like Apple have not done and Microsoft have not done, is Google lives in the cloud. Google lives online where kids are, and other people are trying to keep their like Apple has all their really great apps, but they don't go anywhere. they go on that device, and to share them out is a bit hard, and it's not like that in Google. And that's just people haven't kept up.
Or there's just a lot more.
I saw a couple of ISTEs ago, Dr. Miki Okaku was talking about how education and medicine are the next fields that are going to become digitized. And he likened it kind of to music. You know, at one time we were listening to just phonographs that the quality wasn't good. They were stuck in one place. But now we have our music with us on demand, wherever we go, in clean, clear quality. Do you agree with that concept? And do you think that's where this is heading? And we talk about the challenges of how education changes so slowly. Do you see that as a vision, and can we get there?
I don't want it to be digitized. I want it to be about learning, unlearning, and relearning, and however that comes about does. But I don't want kids sitting in front of computers doing skills and doing Khan Academy. And what makes you a learner is your relationship with your coach, and let's call it a coach now. But I don't want to see kids on computers. Like, I remember the Christensen novel about disrupting education and how kids would sit in front of computers, and it's not what I'm looking for.
I mean, I don't mean to throw in Palm Beach under the bus, but they invested $5.6 million in a program called iReady. And that was their kind of claim to fame. Like, oh, we have all this, you know, we've invested this program for personalized learning, and the kids are going to be using technology. And I'm like, what are they creating? Where's the constructivism in this? Like, how are kids actually constructing their own knowledge? How are they demonstrating their learning? Listen, I'm not against tools that can be used to scaffold skills, and I think that that's fine, but let's call it what it is. Let's call it a tool that, you know, that you use, but let's say that's technology integration. Like that those are two different
things. Answers, not to make questions.
Right, exactly.
Wow. My mind is just kind of blown here. We've hashed through quite a few pretty powerful topics. So I'm really excited. I did download the version of the book. So I'm just wondering, again, what I saw when he was talking about digitizing education is that kind of personalization. And that brings us back maybe to the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about how students have different learning styles and abilities, and, you know, reaching students that may not be able to go as fast in some areas. And do you think that the digitization in that sense, and the personalization, maybe rather than calling it digitization, call it maybe personalization, so that the student misses a lecture, they've got a connection with the teacher digitally? Is that fair?
It's still lecturing, and I mean, that's what the web is for. You can.
I think there is a place for that, and there's not a place for that. We have to be careful of the slippery slope that personalization, because I see people do personalization that is, oh, you need to do these 4 things. So I remember I used to do SRA when I was a kid, and it was a little box where I would read, and I would be like, I'm a super achiever, so I would finish that box the first month of school. But did I really learn? Because I answered multiple choice questions? I'm not sure. So I don't want the SRA digitized version to become our schools, but if it is creating things based on your learning passions, yes, I want it to be digitized.
Yeah, I think that when we think, in terms of personalization or digitized learning, I'm thinking, or I don't want to call it digitized, I'd like to call it more digital learning. And the idea is that having students that are making their thinking visible, that are creating portfolios, that are, creating artifacts that show evidence of growth. You know, I'm obsessed with Seesaw. We're implementing it this year at our school to be able to show growth over time. And this could look different for different students, because based on where they are, then that's how we're going to be able to use that evidence to show growth. But the slippery slope of, like Holly is saying, where, you know, it's these kind of drill and kill, skill and drill, or whatever you want to call it, programs where they're just kind of hammering through levels and leveling up. That doesn't necessarily mean anything about where the learner is. That's not really showing their thinking. And it is that slippery slope.
All right. Well, we could probably go a lot longer with this conversation. It's really fascinating. But it is the bottom of the hour, and I'm going to, we have to get to our speed geek questions.
Yes, please.
All right. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen. So give me just a second to share my screen with everybody.
It's a slippery slope asking Tanya and I questions like this.
All right. So I have the speed
You're
geek
not
questions ready. So these are just quick, whimsical, and then, yeah, they can be quick and easy, or you can dig deeper if you want. But each one of you gets the same question. We'll do 3 of them. So here's number 1. Oh, your favorite. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Harry Potter?
I'm gonna have to go with Harry Potter.
And my question is no.
She's not into it.
None of the above. Okay. We'll spin to the next question. That's a perfectly fine answer. Name your first storage device. So floppy disk, mine's cassette. So
I'm older than Tanya. Floppy disk.
Tanya?
I think I had a zip drive with 32 meg.
The Zip. That didn't last long, but it was a good one.
Yeah.
It
I
was
think
durable.
I had floppies too in high school. Yeah.
I had hard drive.
Okay. And let's go one more here. There we go. Okay. And the last one.
Oh,
What's your favorite tablet?
I still love my iPad.
I like to say this about the iPad. I love the iPad, and this is why. I don't think it's meant for all education, all grades and levels of education, but I say this about it. When you give a teacher an iPad, they can't fit 1985 teaching in an iPad, but they can fit it in a Chromebook. And so that's why I love a tablet in education, because a teacher is forced to rethink everything when you hand them a tablet.
Wow. I hadn't thought of that. That really is a powerful answer. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank you guys so much. I'm going to post a giveaway on my website for the book, and I hope people read it. I'm dying to read it. It looks really good. And the districts that I work with down here in New York are craving for good Google infused stuff. So this is perfect
Thank you.
book and at perfect timing.
Thank you for having us. This is great.
Yeah.
So great to meet you.
I would have liked to know your answers.
Oh, no. Actually, I told you the cassette. That was my first storage device, believe it or not. They used to have cassette tapes that you'd start your computer programming in. So I've got both of you beat there. I'm definitely, Star Wars and Harry Potter would definitely be kind of tied. I was a Star Trek just by, watching on TV from time to time. But what was the other question? Remember?
Tablet.
Tablet. I was an iPad favorite thing, but I'm trending towards a Chromebook now. I take it almost everywhere, especially like the small touchscreen ones.
Yeah, I do. I have that too. I like it.
Yeah, the touchscreen really makes it kind of come alive. So,
Yoga one where it flips over. I do like that.
yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for taking your time, and I can't wait to read the book. And we'll be tweeting out. I'll be following you.
Thank you. You too.